All right, it's 2
love it.
o'clock. It's 2 o'clock, and we're going to get started. People will keep jumping on, but I want to welcome you guys officially. My name is Casey Graham. I am founder, CEO of Gravy. I'm a husband to Casey, and I've got 2 kids, Darby and Gage. I'm here with Joe Judge. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you, Casey.
Yeah, so we don't usually see each other. It's more on the phone, and it's good to see you.
Same here.
Yeah, where are you today? Tell everybody where you are.
So I'm in South Carolina, Pawleys Island area, below Myrtle Beach, above Charleston.
Okay.
On the coast.
Is it weird to see alligators where you are, or no?
We're actually used to it. We've been here about 10 years. So, you know.
But is it real? Is that real? You actually
It's real. You see them. You see them.
Okay, because I went and stayed on one of those islands down there, and we literally, it felt like a 10-foot alligator was literally just in the front yard one day. And it was like, that's crazy. So, hey, we got a lot of people jumping on. You'll see this number spiking. I want to, guys, for you listening, Joe, I met Joe in 16, the end of 2016, was it? Yeah, it was 2016. It was October of 2016. And I was in a really bad place in life. And Joe and I met in Atlanta, Georgia at the W Hotel. And he met with me for the first 8 hours. He had me do a bunch of homework to come in. And then the next day was about a half a day. I had my wife come in and meet with me and Casey and Joe. And it was one of those places where I went from one of the lowest places in my life mentally, had a bank account with some money in it, but was just, felt like didn't know what the future was going to be or what my purpose was, or like, I felt like I'd just been lucky in life and it was kind of just floating through and didn't know what to do. And Joe stepped in, and after the first day, here's the number one thing Joe taught me. He said that he'll try to say it nicer, but this is really what he said. He said, for the first 36 years of my life, I have lived it and done my leadership for one person, and that was me. You told me that. But he said, come back tomorrow and we're going to help you figure out the next 36 years of your life. And we put together an intentional plan, and we started living off of it. And I struggle every single day to be intentional, but every single week. And so guys, I talk with Joe every Monday morning at 8 a.m. He works with my mind, the relationships, people around me, but Joe also works with some of the best, if I said the company's names, you would know them all and have benefited from them all, and works with their executive teams and leaders, and works with some great people. So Joe, I'm not going to steal your thunder. How would you describe who you are, what you do, and let everybody in a little bit on who you are?
Thank you, Casey. And it has really been a pleasure talking to you every Monday too. You're just one of those exceptional people. And I feel fortunate that we get to spend that time together. So I'm just a guy who's been on a journey my whole life figuring out how to get better. And it's probably borders on an obsession, but it's real. And I look at my wife and I look at my kids. We've been married almost 40 years. I've got 3 married kids, got 5 little grandkids. And that every time I'm with them, there's a reason why I should be getting better. And so I've just been on this learning development. I'm fascinated by human nature and human behavior. And I believe that leadership is counterintuitive. And so you have to step out of the natural into the unnatural. And because I've had some great mentors and teachers in my life, I'm somebody who likes to pass that on and help other people with the same thing.
That's good. So this is the problem with me in interviews, is when you say something like that, I got to stop and dig a little bit on it. What do you mean that leadership is counterintuitive or natural to unnatural? What does that mean?
So without getting down a rabbit hole, what we see a lot of publicly today is natural leadership rather than unnatural. Somebody yells at you, you yell back. Somebody insults you, you insult them back. Somebody is mean to you, you either avoid them or you engage them. And that's just natural human behavior that we're all born with. The unnatural behavior is when somebody is rude to you, to take a pause and say, hey, what's wrong? Where did we get off track? Engage the conversation. Somebody yells at you instead of yelling back, say, tell me more, right? It's bypassing that natural tendency when the limbic system of the brain gets hijacked and say, no, I'm going to rise above it. And
we've talked about this. Tell me more. I want to go down this rabbit hole for a minute. Okay. So you'll have to excuse me. This is what we do.
You got it. It's your rabbit hole.
Okay? Yeah.
Yep.
But this is how our calls go, right? I mean, it's just like, it's Joe says gold. My brain is Alabama brain. And I have to like ask a bunch of other questions. And so just for going down that rabbit hole, talk to me about like we have a bunch of leaders listening to this call.
Okay.
They also have families and relationships and all that stuff. You have taught me that phrase, tell me more, a lot more. So give a practical example of like a leader listening to this, and maybe they're a middle level manager and they got some people that report to them or whatever. Something happens, or like they're in a review. Let's just say Gravy just did reviews and the person they're leading just doesn't like something and they're mad about something or whatever. Like, how do you use that tell me more phrase?
Yeah. So what tell me more is it starts with the understanding that typically the way people communicate with one another is not the complete story. And so I will hear certain words, certain concepts, certain phrases, and my mind gets hijacked and it takes me down a road. Tell me more, hits the pause button and says, fill in the rest of the context so that I'm not making up a story. Let's deal with fact. It also does the most important thing of all. It forces me to shut up. That's the most important thing. It just tell me more, shuts me up, right? It puts me in a listening mode. And if we can get past that initial emotional wave and tell me more and just be quiet, it usually goes a much different direction than we expected it to.
Instead of trying to convince them or shape them or move their thoughts down a different path or persuade or any of that stuff, just tell me more. That's awesome.
Or even more than that, Casey, it's instead of putting energy into the wrong place, because that's not where the conversation was going to go, right? You allow it to settle back down and people start to, it's when somebody is stressed or nervous or defensive, their initial outpouring is not typically on point. Give them a little bit of time to talk it out and they'll get to where the real issue lies.
That's so good.
Right?
And that's true at home as well, right?
Only if there's other people living there with you.
That's funny. All right. So we got a couple, I had to go down that rabbit hole,
yeah.
But I want to start with a strange question. So a lot of people listening, they get into business, or like we have these dreams or fantasies that one day we're going to make a lot of money and we're going to be wealthy. Or most people in general would say, I want to be wealthy. If you said I'd rather have it or not have it, they would take it. You've dealt with and been around some of the ultra wealthy. You've been around some that are just kind of rich, and you've been obviously around, people have nothing and everything in between. But I want to talk about people that make money, because a lot of aspirations of a lot of CEOs is that one day they're going to get the result of, they get this payout. I'm going to make this money in my life at that point. And so I met you because I believed in that.
Right. And
then you helped me retool and reorient my entire being, that like, it's just, that's not what the end game is. And so what do you see happen in like with money and extra and wealth and all of the things that you see? What happens in families? What happens to people? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly?
All right. So that's a great question, because it's I think it's fueled by the lottery concept, right? People sit back and imagine, if only I won that $400 million, if only I won that $600 million, right? And then life would be, and what they don't realize is how different life looks, right? For the billionaire household. And I have spent a lot of time in those circles with those folks. And I think what you understand to start with is money doesn't create problems, it magnifies problems. And so it's whatever's there, you put money over top of it, it just blows it up bigger, right? And so the same issues would be there without it, but they're bigger. And the dynamics start to change around money. I would tell you that every billionaire family that I've worked with is afraid of what the money will do to the next generations. And that's important to understand. They're afraid of what it'll do. And it goes back to, I think, the fact that the families I work with typically are pretty savvy, plan-oriented, intentional kind of folks, right? They're asking the right kind of questions to start with. But it was Freud and modern psychology who said that there's two things everybody needs. Everybody in life to be happy and fulfilled needs meaningful work and true love. And you just look at ultra wealth and meaningful work. It's hard, right? It's because why do you need to work, and what happens if you don't work, and where does it, right? And how do you measure that and balance it? And so for a lot of families, what they're trying to figure out is how do they get their kids to understand the value of meaningful work? And then the other thing that money can do, it can bring the wrong people into your midst so that you're never quite sure why people are around you. And, you know, it's just real. So the families that tend to be successful with that money, they see money as neutral, which means they don't use it as a leverage, which gets tied to love, and they don't just give it away, right? But they teach their kids that work is essential and that you work because of who you are, right? Not just because you have the basic need. And it's that constant balance. And I was in a conversation not long ago with a mid 30-year-old who had made a lot of money. And the first thing he said was, my kids will never have to work. And literally, you know me well enough. So my comment back was, so everything you've done in your life that's brought meaning and satisfaction, you want to take away from your kids. It's like, why would you do that, right? It's like, why would you do that? And I do think that's also why you're seeing that movement where more and more of the uber wealthy are giving away their money, right? They're just giving it away. They don't, because they're like, I want my kids to not have that shadow of the money, to be able to live out their own dreams.
What is meaningful work?
So I believe I've never gone to work. I believe I get up every day and do what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what I call meaningful work. What you would do even if you didn't have to. What you do because it brings out the best in you. What you do because you believe you're uniquely suited to be doing what it is exactly that you're doing. Which is, by the way, the other reason I believe life's lived out in chapters, because you're not the same person at 50 that you were at 25.
Okay.
And so your needs and how you evolve as a person, and I believe often moves you into different fields.
So part of this thing is, and the reason I wanted to have you on, and guys, I know a bunch of you are listening, and Joe, you've never done a webinar before, have you?
I'm not.
Joe, he's this, I call him the Holy Spirit of gravy. And he's like this ever present, he convicts and he encourages. And it's like all this thing is, and he is in all of the relationships. And every table I've ever sat at with Joe, without Joe there, Joe is more popular at the table than anybody else there when we all have a connection. This is true. And I'm not trying to kiss his butt. I've told him this privately as well. And one of the things he challenged me to do, and I'm just taking a little pause here, when we talk about this meaningful work, is that you challenged me in starting Gravy to think 10 years. My story was I could start and grow and sell a company, and like I could do all that kind of stuff. Why did you think it was important for me for just me as a human? Because this translates to a bunch of people listening. Why do you think it was important for me to think in a 10-year increment and then think through, like you said, I think it will be good for your kids to see you do this?
Yeah. And if I remember it right, it wasn't just 10 years. I said, build a business that you want your kids to work at one day.
That's right.
Right. And so we went down the road, and whatever that time frame was, rather than a company that you can build and quickly flip and sell. Right.
Right.
The reason is because you make different decisions. You hire different people and you set different objectives, right? And so when you look at uber successful people, right, there's certain things that they all have in common, and there's always, right, there's always exceptions to this, but I'm just gonna tell you what I've seen and learned, right, sitting in their offices, right? They all have a vision bigger than anybody else's typical vision. We see something that other people don't see, and they believe it's real. And it doesn't matter if they're opening up a cleaning service or if they're building gravy, or if they're building any, they just believe they're going to do it bigger and greater and grander than it's being done anywhere else. And they just see a yes to everything, right?
Mm.
And that's what it starts with. And I think it's important just to have that vision, right? There's also a relentlessness that says we're going to do this right. We're not going to settle. They're relentless with it, right? It's to a point where if you just think about it, if you build a multi-billion-dollar company, the typical questions along the way was, why the heck didn't you sell it when it was at 20 million?
That's right.
Because everybody else would have, right? It's like, and then why did you not sell it at 100 million? And then why did you not sell it at 200 million? Right now? Why do you keep going? And there's this relentlessness to the great businesses that have been out there, right? The other thing, and this was what was important for you, and I'm proud of you, you're doing it. You have to embrace the hard to get there.
I hate it.
You have to embrace the hard, right?
I know, but I don't want to.
I know, right?
Tell them about hard isn't wrong.
Yeah, hard isn't wrong. It's only hard. And hard only means there's some value to it, because the stuff that's not hard never has any value to it, right? And so, right, you got to embrace the hard to get there, to do it right. There's too many shortcuts that people take, and we see that in business all the time, and they don't last. They're not sustainable, or worse than that, we're not proud of them. Right? We look back and go, wow, we're not proud of that. And right. And so what kind of a culture, what kind of people, what kind of expectations, right? What does it represent that one day our kids could come in and be proud of it? I think that's, that's just key. And so I thought that was important for you.
That hits me in the heart, where coming up with an idea, getting some people together, making some quick money doesn't.
Right.
But that's where culture celebrates. Culture currently celebrates the young dude or lady who has an idea, they get VC money, and all of a sudden they're this unicorn that, they sell their company, all this kind of stuff.
And too often, Casey, they sell their soul. That's what they sell with the money.
That's what I did.
Right.
That's what I did. I did that. And I got to that other side, and you get to the other side, and you're sitting there, and there's a lot of people listening, and they think, man, if I could just get to the other side of this monetary rainbow. And reality is, whatever your anxieties, whatever your depressions, whatever you're drinking, whatever you're smoking, whatever you're taking, I'm saying all of it, you're just going to do more of it.
That's right.
Whatever you're hiding.
That's right.
I mean, all of it. It's all going to just be magnified, right? Yeah. And so for everybody listening, the biggest takeaway, and Todd wrote this so far, is hard isn't wrong. It's only hard. And that's I hate the statement. Honestly, it's genius. I hate it because it's true. I hate it.
Casey, that's a society thing too, right? It's like, don't work harder, work smarter. That's not true.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to work harder, right? And what I tell people all the time in leadership roles, they only pay you to do the hard stuff. They're not paying you to do the easy stuff, right? That's just an expectation. But the reason your salary is where it is and it's higher than people are is the hard stuff lands on your desk, right? And you don't get to back away from it. You have to move through it. And I'll just tell you, everybody who's built $1 billion company has crushed through some hard walls to get there.
Wow. Let's talk about some team stuff. When it comes to the best leaders and these companies that you see and you work with, high performing teams that remain healthy, because that's rare. Like there's I don't know, those are rare. So what do you see? Like, who are they? How do they operate different than the low performing teams? What do you see inside of that?
So the first thing that I see is that the people who are on those teams are aligned with the purpose of the company and are happy in their roles, right? Which what that means is that they're doing what they believe is meaningful, important work that fits them, and that they are contributing to the whole, and they're not jockeying for leverage over other people, right? That selfishness is what kills a team. Selfishness is what kills a marriage. Selfishness is what kills every relationship, right? And that team is just as fragile. And so in the best teams, what you find is because they're aligned and because they're in their role, it's so much easier for them to be comfortable and support one another, right? What if you're not happy? There's people listening here that even on our team, I'd love your advice for them.
What if somebody's listening and they're not happy in their role? They don't feel like it's right for them. What would you do if you're in a role, you're not happy in it? What would you do?
So what I have done is you first have to go inside and you got to ask yourself, why am I not happy? Right? Is there an expectation that's not realistic that I'm locked onto, or is it I'm not all in, right? I don't get something. So I got to first go inside. Then I want to talk to my supervisor, right? And then at the end of the day, anytime I haven't been happy, I've left, right? And I've caught flack for that over the years when I've said it, right? Because I believe life is too short to be unhappy, right? And I know we have to pay bills, and I've done it at times when, right, you got to have a lot of faith. You got to trust that you're going to be able to figure it out. But it's also just to be stuck, right? It was Thoreau who said, the masses of men live lives of quiet desperation and carry with them to their grave their song unsung, and that haunts me. And I'm just not willing to do it, right? So unless you have a special need child or a special situation in your family that says that work isn't important, I just have to pay the bill for this right now. If you're not in the right role, I'd encourage people to explore getting out. And wrong fit isn't a bad person. It's just a wrong fit. We haven't failed because we're in a wrong fit.
That's good. It's just a wrong fit.
It's a wrong fit.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the first exercise you did with the Gravy leadership team. So guys, we go up to Charlotte, and there's I think 6 of us, and we sit down with Joe in a room like I'm in now. And so essentially I'm telling everybody about this guy named Joe all the time, right? He's like this guy that's just like the guy you call Monday morning, but nobody knows him. And I'm like, I promise you're going to love him. I promise you're going to love him. It's going to be great, all this stuff. And so we get up there, we get in a room, and Joe asked like 3 questions, but inside of the first questions that he asked amongst our leadership team, and we're a company, like we're not a small group at church. This isn't some like nonprofit picnic. This is an executive leadership team. And one of the questions he asked us was about to answer what one significant event from our childhood or going under, I think it was 18 years and younger, what was a significant event from our childhood. And that was your first exercise with our team. Why did you start there with a bunch of professionals?
So there are not a lot of non-negotiables in life, but there are always a few non-negotiables in life. Vulnerability is a non-negotiable, right? In terms of you have to be willing to be vulnerable to be part of a team. If you are not willing in some shape or form to show vulnerability, you can't be a part of a team. You just can't. And
why? Tell me why before you go on with that.
Because people can't connect to you. They don't know if it's real. And so to be a team, we got to be able to count on each other, right? We got to be able to help each other. We got to be able to ask for help, right? So what I do in that question, which lots of people ask similar questions, right? When they get in there, and the first thing you notice is the answer to that's whatever you want it to be. Answering the question is not optional. How you answer it, right? You could say the most incredible thing happened to me as a kid was I had a grandfather die and I watched it, right? Or some of the things that you hear that are heart-wrenching, right? Or the most amazing thing was when I was a little kid, my parents took me to California and I got to see Disney, and it was all of a sudden I got into creativity, right? You can take these any way you want to take them. You just have to be real. You have to be able to put it out. And so for the little bit I know about Gravy and the team, and you had new people come in, I think what you'll remember is by the time we were done with a few questions early, everybody was on equal ground, right? And so if I'm on a team with you, I have to be willing to ask for help. I have to be willing to say, I don't know. I have to be willing to help you and not look down on you if you don't know. That's what vulnerability is about. It's not about being unsafe. It's about being real and opening up and saying, I don't have it all together. And so it's one of the very few non-negotiables.
So let's take that to the people listening. That's what you did for us. But if you're a CEO listening, how would you facilitate? Because it would have been weird if I asked it, but it wasn't weird when you asked it. So what's or maybe a B variant exercise of this? Like, how do you do that without having Joe in the room?
So it becomes a mindset, right? So one of the things that I encourage CEOs all the time, or anybody on an executive team, is how do you deal with mistakes, right? So somebody makes a mistake in the workplace, and it's costly, and it learns. And by the way, right, it's just real. It's just going to happen, right? You can sit down with that person and say, man, I remember the big mistake I made. I was scared, right? I'll tell you what, I didn't sleep for 3 nights until I figured out how to fix it. And what I learned up front was, I wish I would have asked for help right away, right? Now, how you feeling about the mistake you made? How do we help you redeem it? How do we help you get over it, right? But to connect, I've literally seen people give the impression, I can't believe you made a mistake. I've never made one in my life, right? Nothing is, right? It's just a crock, right? And so I think with vulnerability is, how do you, without violating boundaries or appropriateness, and we know where both of those are, how do we expose enough to say, yeah, we've been there with you, right? And it's okay, and let me help you. Because, by the way, redemption is the great leadership act, right? Is to take somebody who's failed and turn them around. That's what leaders do. And so instead of acting like we're above it or beyond it, act like we understand it, we're with them. And I think if we just, I think for meetings, just to sit down and say, where'd you screw up this week? And talk about it, right? It's, I think that's what vulnerability is all about.
And vulnerability leads into my next question. You also, and this is huge for every single human being listening to this, and is you talked about trust.
Yeah.
And I have never heard what you said about trust. It changed my literal understanding of the concept, because the way I operate, which you know me well anyway, it's either all or none, love, hate, we'll get to language later, but trust, I thought it was either I trust you or I don't.
Right.
And you helped us understand that trust is actually on a scale, and you helped us with a trust exercise to show that it is not true that I either trust you or I don't, but there's actually a bunch of in between, and you gave us language around that. I would love to do that. And this works in families, kids, relationships, marriage, all of it, right? So let's talk about that.
Got it. And it fits into that conversation we were just having around vulnerability, right? Is that, first of, none of us are complete failures and none of us are perfect. We're all fit in that range somewhere, right? And the exercise you're talking about came to me on a plane ride when I was just frustrated with an executive who kept going back and forth constantly over, I don't trust this person, I trust that person. It just sounds ridiculous, right? It's like, it's just, what does it mean to say to somebody, I don't trust you, right, is non-redeemable? What do they do?
Wow.
What do they do with that, right? If somebody were to say to me, I don't trust you, I would be sad and I'd want to leave. I'd be like, what do you do, right? It's like you can't function like that. And so when I got to where I was going with this individual who kept saying, talking about this person they didn't trust and all these other people they did, I literally went through an exercise. I said, do you trust that they show up to work on time? Do you trust that they're not stealing from you? Do you trust that they dressed appropriately? Do you trust that they're treating people respectfully, right? We kept, and what we were doing was we were sliding up that spectrum, right? I was getting from 0 on up until we finally got, I don't trust he'll tell me when it's not working. Got it. All right, now how do we fix that, right? Now you sit down with that individual and you say, literally, I trust you on all these things. I got this area where I'm stumbling. Help me with it, right? And you look at it and you go, I can fix that, right? I can work on it with you, right? I trust you on everything, but you don't hit deadlines. Let's get these deadlines on, right? I trust you, but I don't think you're going to come to me ahead of time when you have a problem, right? So what is it? Figure out where you're stumbling, but don't make it an all or nothing, right? It's because you can't do anything with it. But the most powerful thing that for me, right? And again, this is something I do because I'm living it out best I can, right? Is when I can look at you and put you on a spectrum and realize how much you do well, but where you're tripping up, it then forces me to go inside and say, where am I tripping up, right? And too many times leaders make the mistake of always looking at people around them and not looking inside. And I can't sit there and say, man, Casey, you're knocking it out of the park, but we got this one spot. without realizing, okay, I got a spot too. Where is it? Right. And work on it. And leaders are often in a role where nobody else can tell them that. And they best tell themselves.
So let's flip that. I want to do this. So like you did the scale with us, and like it was 0 means I don't trust anything about you. Like I don't trust you'll show up for work. I don't like, I mean, the minute, all the way up to 10 being 100% trust in every, and you said even in intimate relationships, you said even in your relationship, that you're never at a full 10 of I completely trust you.
No.
I want you to talk a little bit about that. Why? How? Like, because people say, oh, I'm married to this person. We completely trust each other, right? Or this is my friend. I completely trust them. Just show me the other side.
Because we're all human beings, right? We're all flawed, right? We're all imperfect, right? We all have right? And so, you know, early on, I had to learn that when I told my kids, oh, we got to do this next summer, they were going to remember that. And I might forget that. Right. and I don't trust that everybody I care about when they're under stress or pressure is going to be the same consistent as when they're not. And it's like, it's just real. We all have our, right. And a topic for a whole nother day is what perfectionism does to relationships, right? It's something we want to get, we want to take the magic pill and get cured from that because it doesn't help, right? But to put somebody up there then just is going to let you down, right? I had to learn early on that, right? People who I worked with trusted I would be there. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be dependable, right? And I learned that I was an overcommitter, which was a character flaw. Right? There's nothing honorable to overcommitting. And the reality was, when I overcommit, I would let the family down. How do you start to, right? So then you look and say, okay, that's my trust issue right now. Do they trust that I'm going to be there, or do they trust that something's going to come up and interfere? How do I fix that, right? And so we all have those. It's just part of the human condition. And I think to be aware of that puts us in a position where we're addressing it and not ignoring it. That makes sense?
I think, yeah, it does. And for people listening, if you're a leader or you're in any relationship, and even this actually just occurred to me, I'm going to do this with my friends. I'm going to say hey, trust is not a zero-sum game. You know that if I say I'll be there, I will. But what's the point when where's the point where you feel like you just don't know with me on that? And to ask the question, to bring in, and even for the team to ask the question of, like, people say, oh, I trust you. I work here. I trust. Well, just because you work somewhere doesn't mean you trust the person. How could you solicit, or how could I, even in a real time, how would you ask the question to solicit feedback to find where's that gap? If I'm at a 7 with somebody, where am I stuck? How would you solicit that for self-awareness?
So trust is a powerful word, right? And so I wouldn't say, where don't you trust me, right? But we know what it means, right? We know what it means, but it's a powerful word. But I would say, hey, I'm trying to clean some stuff up. Where do I consistently let you down?
That's good.
Right. They'll tell you, you don't call me back when you say you're going to call me back, right? You make plans and you cancel, right? Or whatever it is, right? It's like, but where do I consistently let you down? Tell me one place, right? And I think that takes the power out of it.
Gosh, it's so good. Joe, you're magical. You're a magical unicorn that floats around South Carolina, and it is so good. I'm so happy everybody gets to hear you today. I have a real joy here. I want to flip to the leader. That was the team stuff. Now let's talk about leadership. Most leaders I know, and I want to get a little bit of feedback. If you're listening to this right now, if you have not just frustrations, but you feel massive frustrations in your work, put a 1 in the chat. If you feel massive frustrations on days, it could be macro or it could just be micro, that you feel frustration, press 1, because I do. And you help me a lot with 2 words that most executive coaches are not talking about, which is anxiety and shame. And nobody here has frustrations. Well, we have one that has frustrations. So you talk about anxiety and shame a lot. How do top perform? What is anxiety and shame and frustration? And when I call you and I'm worked up and you let me I'm just like saying this, and anybody that knows me knows that I can get on that tyrant and that raid, and it's just like, it's time to go. We got to get to all this stuff. And I'm acting that way, and you calm me down. How do the top performers handle anxiety and shame, and define that a little bit?
Yeah. So let me just word it just a little bit differently, right? So
Okay.
I think there are three things, and I'm going to put shame right on the side. We'll get to that, right? I think there's three things that people don't talk about in the way that they need to: fear, anxiety, and insecurity. Fear, anxiety, and insecurity are part of the human condition. We're born with them, right? Fear is in the present, right? Insecurity is that I don't measure up, and anxiety is future, right? And we have it.
Wow. Those are, can you say that one more time?
Yeah. Fear's in the present, right? Insecurity is I don't measure up,
Okay.
right? Anxiety is in the future.
That's good.
Right? So that's the separating point, right? I'm just, right, at the risk of offending anybody, which I'm not ever going to try to do, you know that, right? I'm just to be direct, right? Is that we treat them like there's a cure for it. So come take this pill and we'll make it go away. Instead of, these are part of being alive. These tell us we're alive. These are things to be paying attention to, and to start to understand when they go up, what is it that contributes to them to go up? When they go down, what does it contribute to them to kind of, the best leaders normalize those and talk about those, not as if we should be ashamed of those, right? Which I can't tell you how many people are ashamed of those things, right? Instead of saying, right, so one of the things I'll often ask people is, so where did your fear, insecurity, anxiety slap you in the face this week? And what'd you do to put it back down? Right? Because it's just gonna get you, right? And we have to understand it's just part of the being alive, and we can learn to manage it. We can learn to work through it. We can learn not to listen to it, right? Because it almost always is going to lie to us, right? It's almost always, there's exceptions where fear is real, but in most cases, it's going to lie to us. I think shame often is associated with our misunderstanding of fear, anxiety, and insecurity, and measuring up and dealing with life and feeling like something is wrong with us, right? And we feel shame over that. Instead of, there's a moment that I screwed up. There's a moment I failed. There's a moment that I did it, but that doesn't put a label over me. It doesn't have to. And so just to be able to talk about those things, to be able to recognize those things, be able to pay attention to them. And for shame, Casey, one of the most important things is to pay attention to who uses shaming in relationships around you. And I just tell you, I've learned to distance myself from those folks.
What's an example of shaming? What would you mean? What do you mean by that?
I can't believe you. How dare you? Right? What's wrong with you? Right? I mean, that kind of language that you'll hear, and you hear it in the workplace, right? It's like, you know, and that's kind of a shame language that people use. And, you know, I've just learned that the people I'm around matter. Right. And I don't know if I've ever told you this about, but my faith is important in this, because my faith tells me God loves everybody. And somewhere in there, it gives me permission not to have to. they're covered, you know, they're covered.
That's so good.
I'm half kidding.
I know. So, right. But you talk about this stuff, I know, with me, but like what about the people that are the ultra wealthy and all that? Do they deal with this?
All the time. And where I've been most honored in my life is to be in that circle where I'm the person they feel safe talking to it about. Right. And we all have fear, anxiety, and insecurity. Money does not make it go away. It just doesn't. Whatever you have when you're out of money, you put $1 billion over it, it blows it up, makes it bigger.
So everybody listening, fear, insecurity, and anxiety. When you get your pay raise and you get your thing or whatever, it's just going to be more of what we already are in those three areas. So if you're a fear-driven person, Fear-driven people, honest to God, believe that they are going to get money and their fear is going to go away, and it just does not happen.
Right. And Casey, I'll tell you, if it's worth just a minute, there's a way to manage it, right? And
How?
and there's a quick, little, easy, and I'm not downplaying it. This is what I use, right? With fear, the best question to ask, which came from the Who Moved My Cheese book, what would you do if you weren't afraid? We always know the answer to that question, and it's rarely ever off track. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Just put that. If I wasn't afraid of going broke, if I wasn't afraid of this, if I wasn't afraid the person would react this way, how would I do it? That's going to be the right one. That's fear is good that way. Insecurity, right? To realize first and foremost that we are in a position that everybody around us feels as insecure as we do, right? And that there is never a level of perfection that's reached, right? And that doing our best is doing our best, right? And that's all I can bring, right? Having never done one of these before, right? I was nervous getting on here now. I said, you know what? Can't do anything but be my best, right? It's like you just show up and you give it your, right? That's how you deal. Instead of letting insecurity hold you back. And
That's
anxiety, everybody on this call has a track record of success. That's the best antidote for anxiety. Whatever it is you're going to face in the future, your track record shows you've been able to handle things as they've come up. You'll be able to handle that.
So what are the things that so we just went through this, like gravy. Just by the way, this is an update that we've got all our commitments in for raising the next round of financing and to go to the next level. And I have kryptonite, but one of my biggest kryptonite is if I took an investor's dollar and then I failed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just, because I don't want people the people I respect not liking me would be like my worst. But you told me it was good. Like, just, I need to do it anyway. and so to go out and do that has been a thing. But then here's what you said that's helped me. So go back in your life and look at the data of your life. So when you've set out to do something, did you ever know the answers of how you were going to be successful? And the answer is always no, I've never known. Did you find the resources and people and relationships to figure it out? The answer is yes. And you had me go back to go forward. And is that what you're saying inside of this?
So it is. I think to see ourselves as capable is important, right? We're capable of living our life and our journey and our walk, right? And we're going to do it. And when we can start seeing ourselves as capable, the most important thing is we start seeing people around us as capable.
Really?
And leaders to see their team as capable is critical.
Talk about that, because every entrepreneur, all the people I know, they are like, it's oftentimes there's these backroom conversations that happen at masterminds with these leaders, and they're just dogging their team. But they feel like they're Superman, right? And you talk about that with me. It's like, don't solve it. Don't solve it. Don't solve it. Let them solve it. Is that all of this same thing?
Yeah. So when you solve somebody else's problem, you made yourself incapable, right? And incompetent, and you made them incompetent, right? And so to see them as capable, they'll figure it out. They might do it differently than you will. They might come up with a better answer than you would have come up with, right? Mm-hmm. But as part of it now, if you have the wrong people, you got to deal with that. Get the right people in there. So sometimes you got to change the team out, right? You got to get right. You need a better skill set, different skill set, right? But you got to be able to let go and let those people be capable to do their job and trust that they're going to. You still hold them accountable, right? You still know where they're at, but you don't see people as incapable. And I'll just tell you, the worst thing is when you see your children as not being capable of handling their life. And I see it all the time, because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So if you treat your team like that, you treat your kids like that. It's like, stop. They're capable. They'll figure it out.
Is it weird that one day I feel super capable and the next day I feel super incapable? Like,
where insecurity comes in, right?
There you go. That's good. That's good. Because I told Renee today, I said, I feel like I'm at a 10. You know, we got this commitment to this money. We're moving. We're, you know, all this kind of stuff. But then I said, but tomorrow I'm going to come in and I might be at a 0. So she was like, that's just the way it is, you know?
So with the money, this is a good lesson, right? Because there are people who
Yeah,
invest in us, right?
that's right.
Let's not assume that people who invest in us are stupid.
God, it's so good.
They did their due diligence. They see what it is. They take a chance. They say, I want a part of that, right? That's on them. That's not on us. And it's important for leaders to have good boundaries and know what's theirs and what's somebody else's.
So last thing I'll say about this is I called our mutual friend Ken and how we met. And I said, Ken, I just feel a lot of pressure. And I was just wondering, do you ever feel pressure? He just started laughing. And he said, your problem is if you see the role of CEO being a reward, you're going to miss it. It's a responsibility. And he said, I'm giving you this money as an investment. And he said, I'm not worried about it at all. And I was like, oh my, I've been worried about this. Like, so I'm making up these stories of what even investors in our company, I'm just saying, like, this is real. And the reason I'm doing this live is I want everybody to see, because everybody has this crap. Right. That's a real world example for me. But I could live for a year, Joe, and go, I'm scared to invest the money. I'm scared I'm going to hold on to it because if I lose it, then Ken's going to be mad at me or whatever.
Yeah, but see, what you're really doing in that is you're getting the boundaries blurred, right? Because he decides where he wants to invest his money, right? And that's his responsibility, right?
Good.
Your responsibility when you receive it is to keep it clean and put it to work for what the purpose was designed, right? And use it the way you're supposed to use it, right? Now, if it works, everybody's in great shape. If it doesn't, it's not people coming back to you going, I can't believe you suckered me into that, because that's not what you did, right?
That's right.
And so let things lie where they belong, right? And that's so important, right? It's just so important to right? Think about how many conversations we go into and we're going to deliver some data to somebody and we don't sleep for 2 nights because we're worried about how they're going to, it's up to them how they receive it. It's up to us, just tell them.
Dude, I know, but man, I struggle with that too. I make up all the stories of how they're going to respond and what this is going to mean and how this is going to affect them and everybody and all this stuff. Wow. All right. 2 more. I'm going to skip some on the outline and go to this. You talk about recently that this time that we're in right now, which is a very weird time, there's a lot of more downtime, I guess you would say, and the time to clean out the junk that's affecting our the inside, that's affecting our outside. And you talk about like what you called me, and the question you asked me is like, Casey, you keep asking me like, how is that restlessness going? Because I told you, I said, I can't sit through church. Like I'm even an hour and I'm just like up and I got to go and all this. And he's like, and I was making these excuses of why, and you're like, that something's off there. And you talked about challenging me on this time to like take some areas that are on the inside and really focus on them. Why does, before you get into that, why does the inside or these areas that have plagued us maybe even for years, or maybe even you for years, why is now the time to focus on those? And what does that look like?
All right. So I do believe in some form or fashion, God looked at the world and put us all in a timeout and literally said, I don't like the way y'all are behaving. Right. And we've got lots of evidence around that, looking around and go, wow, timeout was not a bad thing. You look at some children when they're put in timeout and they're just pissed. Right. They're mad. They're restless. They're counting down. They're just waiting to get out. Right. And didn't learn a thing. Right. They're just mad. Right. They got a chip on their shoulder. Right. And it's like being picked on. Right. You look at other kids that go into timeout and they stop and they go, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. They calm down, they regroup and they come out and they go, man, I'm sorry, I'm going to try harder. Right. I think it's important for us in this worldwide timeout to look at our approach to it. Are we bitter and resentful, or are we going to look at it and say, what is it we can learn? And so, right, that's where that starts from. Every company if they were to start over today, would do things differently because they've got some sloppiness in it. There's no exception to that. Some of the best run companies have sloppiness. I've never not seen it. They have workarounds. They've got stuff. They got processes that are broken. They got stuff, but cash covers a multitude of sin, right? So they just keep going, and they're cleaning those up right now. And people are cleaning out their closets. They're cleaning out their attics. Goodwill is just flooded with stuff right now, right? It's like, where I live, garages of this neighborhood have never been so clean. They're spotless, right? It's like everybody's doing it, but it's not enough to do that. I think we also then have to go inside and go, if that's real in all the other aspects of our life, how do we go inside? And we all know what we make excuses for, right? What you talked about it with church, talked about, I can't get to it. You were kind of proud of us. I said, all right, what's wrong there? Because you got to be able to be present, right? You got to be able to pay attention and to go inside. And so personally, I'm using this as a time to go, where in my life do I make excuses for myself, right? Do I rationalize and justify certain things because there's a greater good or a greater purpose? And how do I start to clean some of those things up? And I truly believe those that do that come out of this time better. Right? I don't just think it's an exercise. I think it brings us, I think we're better for our families, we're better for our companies, we're better for our friends, our teams, if we clean up some of the things we've been making excuses for.
That's so good. Tara said we're all in a timeout. Yes. Jessica said worldwide timeout. Let's trend that on Twitter. This is good stuff. Danielle said that anxiety, she said it's a game changer for her, that anxiety, my track record shows I can handle stuff. That's really good. Patient said, feel the fear and do it anyway. That's good. And let's not assume that the people who invest in us are stupid. That's a good one from Bria. Oh man, this is good. Renee said, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. These are just some of the notes that have come through. This is really good stuff. What would you do if you weren't afraid, from John Kozad? So anyway, just some good stuff there. Last question I have, and then we'll finish on time. Mm-hmm. What's one question you would suggest that we ask our teams, spouses, partners, or kids? What's a great question inside of relationships and leadership?
Yeah, so I can't give you one question because you're all looking at different folks on the other end of the question, right? But let me give you some thoughts. There's some things that are important to know when we're in a relationship. We want to know what the dreams of the people close to us are and how those dreams are changing and what they could use from us to help with their dream, right? And that's a good starting point. For those of us with kids who are a little bit older, right, when kids get into the teenage years and above, to be able to say, what is it that you'd like to do with me that we could do more of, instead of just thinking I know the answer to that, right? To go up to a spouse and say, help me understand what are the couple of things I do that make you feel special, right? So I can write it, right? Because so much of what happens in relationships is we think we know the answer and we don't. We just don't, right? We're just wrong, right? It's like, maybe it was right answer 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years, right? But it's just, and to acknowledge that everybody in your life is evolving like you're evolving, and tap into that with questions. I will tell you, and Casey, you and I have talked about this, right? Curiosity keeps people together. Judgment separates. Curiosity keeps us engaged. And so whatever you can do to be curious somehow around your family, so that they don't disbelieve you know, and mostly so that they don't feel judgment, will keep you engaged at a level, and you'll learn whatever it is you have to learn.
So good. Amber Pert just said, can I get a book of his questions to ask? Oh gosh.
I'll bet she'll come up with great questions on her own. Just be curious. Be curious.
Yeah, but we've got 5 minutes left. I want to dig on curiosity. Like, you just mean just relational curiosity? Is that what you're talking about?
No. So the most.
How do you do this in a company? How would you do it in a company perspective?
So here's what happens in a company. right? Somebody behaves in a certain way and I go, damn them, right? And I reach judgment and I create that story and I go down that trail, right? Instead of going, hey, something's going on, help me understand what's up, right? Hey, you seem upset. What's going on, right? Be curious. Hey, you tried a whole different approach there. Instead of saying, what are you thinking, right?
Yeah.
Go. You tried something different. What'd you learn by doing that, right? Be curious. Curiosity has a tone to it, right? It says, I really want to know what, right? Because I'm not going to question your intent. I'm not going to call you out. I don't think you're stupid, right? Help me understand what was going on in your mind that led you there. That leads to the ability to keep people engaged, right? And judgment is a natural human tendency that does not work as we become adults. Right? To judge somebody right? You all know what it is, right? When you're sitting down at Thanksgiving and the family all got together and somebody starts to level the judgment, you just see that the dinner party breaks up.
It's so true.
Curiosity is the antidote to judgment. If you get nothing else out of today, curiosity is the antidote to judgment.
Joe, I know you live inside your body, and I don't know if you necessarily understand how valuable this 1 hour is so valuable. Everybody keeps saying how to learn more from Joe. Joe needs a podcast. Curiosity, where does Joe get this stuff? And man, you're just this is why the bigger picture here, if you're listening, you need people outside of yourself speaking into your life. Yeah. And Joe didn't get on here today and tell you how to market better or how to sell better or how to but that's what this advice that we seek is as leaders is like, how do I lead better? How do I do these things better? But he's working on just us as humans because we're all humans. And the people that get the most done or do the best and end up the healthiest, they ask questions that people aren't asking because they're different. And so, Joe, for everybody listening, he said, some page said, invaluable hour spent listening to this. Thank you. This has been so good. Can't take notes fast enough. Thank you, Joe. This is practical virtual therapy. And I loved every minute of it. Curiosity keeps us engaged. Judgment separates us. That's really good stuff. Joe, what's your parting thought to all the leaders that are going to leave today? What's a send off you would give them?
So the send off I'd give you is leadership is a decision, right? And when you make the decision to lead, you're signing up to do the whole job. Some of it's hard. You got to do it, but you do the whole job. And that in doing the whole job, the reality is we get better at being ourselves, right? When we sign, but when we leadership's a decision. It's not better or worse, but when we make that decision, step into that whole job, and that's when you grow. That's when you get better.
That's good. Last question. I said last one was my last one, but I want to do one more. This one's selfish. Just because I get to talk to you, and so you hear the good, bad, dirty, ugly, miserable. Joe knows 99.9% of everything in my life. What would you say to the people of Gravy that are listening today?
So I would say to the people of Gravy that I'm envious in all the right ways, because what an exciting time. Casey is the reason that Casey just hit this spot with when we first met, which is why I talked to him on Monday morning and said, he's unique and he's special, and he has that vision that has the ability to create something wonderful. And he does not, from everything he doesn't micromanage it. He turns you loose to do what you're doing. And to be in a company like Gravy at this time and at this place is one of those unique rides that I think you all are going to look back on and go, wow, right? This was awesome. And just with that, just don't forget, some of it's hard. That's okay.
That's awesome. Joe, thanks for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We ended exactly 1 hour. Christy Knight said, thank you for your time, wisdom. Joe, facilitating this time. Thank you. Tons of thank yous. Joe, thanks for taking a risk and getting out here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been an honor, Casey. It really has. It's been fun. Thanks for making it easy.
Yeah.